Hey guys, welcome back to Ultimate SNS. I hope everyone's been having a great week. So we're going to look at our garden today and see what we have going on. Obviously, you can see we are looking at our straight neck squash. That is a type of summer squash. Yes, it can be grown in the wintertime. It's going to grow quite a bit slower though. But you're going to notice you're going to produce a lot more fruit as long as you keep that stuff out of the frost. And that's per plant. And the reason why is when it gets real hot, you start having a shortage of either the blossoms for the fruit, the female flowers, or your male flowers. And that's what I noticed over summertime when it get real hot, one or the other wouldn't produce on the plant. And I think it was typically the male flowers wasn't popping out. But now that it's in, 60 degrees at night, 80s in the day, man, it is just overly producing. But you have to be careful and make sure that you keep those fruits from laying on top of each other. So just kind of trim out ever so many. You can have growing on different sections of the plant, and that's fine, but don't let them lay on top of each other while they mature because they will cause rot. Then our other plants over here, we have our winter squash. You want to check out that stuff. It grows round now. It's going to have these like almost pumpkin-ness features to it, but it is still, squash, pumpkin. It's all in the same family. And these here should get the size of a softball, a little bigger if you want to allow it to go that way. You can allow it to age on out and to mature completely out on that vine if you want to have some kind of storage. That skin is going to thicken up quite a bit. Me personally, I plan on eating the skin, so we're not going to allow it to mature completely. We might have a few extras that we can allow to stay on there though. But we're going to move on over to our chickens and stuff here too. But the trick to keeping these gardens going in the wintertime, man, is going to be keeping the frost off of it, which we don't have a whole lot of issues with in this area at this time of the year, but it can be an issue in the northern states. So you're going to need greenhouses. So moving on to our chickens over here, we have, these are our little factories producing fertilizer for next year in the spring, man. They are no longer chicks. They are pullets and a cockerel. You'll be able to see that cockerel look for him there, guys. He's got that nice big red comb sticking up off his head. Very, very easy to find. It's not hard to miss him at all. But that's the nice thing about when they start getting around that 7 to 8 week mark. It's easier to find them. Let's go out and check our chicks in the back here. All right, so our chicks, we have 5 chicks back here. Show you a few of these guys. They're still too young to sex. They're getting close to 2 weeks old since they're hatched. So I don't expect to be able to distinguish anything out of them as of yet. But hey, man, you just never really know. But everyone seems to be doing good in here. We have our heat lamp and stuff like that, but can't really give any definitive answers on what they are yet. So that's basically what I have going on around here. Now I want to talk about some interesting stuff that's happening. Midterms is kind of like the Super Bowl, man. You're going to start seeing all kinds of weird ads, and that's what we're seeing. But first, let's talk about this guy over here in the state of Washington. Let's talk about the dad first. He comes up and he says his son is lying. His son is running for a House representative seat for the state of Washington. And apparently the campaign he's been running on has been a lie this entire time. He says that he was a submarine commander. Turns out son was never a submarine commander. Turns out, yeah, he was in the Navy, but not for the extent of what he claims and not to the degree to which he claimed, which is easily verifiable facts, guys. But the news had came out, and they were fully endorsing this guy, which I find appalling because if you're going to endorse someone, you should do what? You should do your due diligence to make sure you fully vet them. And he was not vetted at all by the media. So those media companies that do that, I wouldn't even watch them. And that's what it comes down to. There's no research done into the lame streams that you see on the main media channels anymore. They don't do any research. More research goes into a basic story on most of your prepper channels than they do in that kind of stuff. They just jump up with like, oh, they're a Democrat. Okay. Oh, they're socialist. Okay, that's really going to get them to back them. That's what it comes down to. Down to the commercials. So there's a few commercials down here in Florida right now. So they're probably down in Texas too. They might be everywhere. I don't know. But they're talking about the situation where The governors in Texas and Florida were taking and they were sending people that were coming across the borders illegally. Now, mind you, here's what happened. They come across the border illegally. The Democrats then put them on buses, gave them voting rights and all this other stuff. They had a package set up, it's got free cell phones and all kinds of stuff. So, okay, we're going to send you to an area where you're going to get some free housing. So they threw them on a bus, and then they sent them to red voting districts, meaning they sent them to the Republican voting districts. Why did they do that? To get them to be able to swing the votes in those areas, because they know they have no chance of winning the midterms. In fact, they're pretty sure they've lost the presidency at this point. But that's what they wanted to do, is be able to swing those voting districts, and it's a way to manipulate the electoral vote. But that's what we're kind of seeing happening now. And DeSantis and I think it was Abbott is the guy in Texas. If I'm wrong, correct me on that, guys. But they're like, nope, not going to happen. They put them back on buses and even planes and sent them to Democrat voting districts. But not just to Democrat voting districts. They sent them to where the rich are, telling everybody, said, you need to make sure that you're accepting people here that are here illegally, because it's hate if you don't do that. So they sent them to Martha's Vineyard and places like that. And those residents over there, they embraced him with open arms, right? No, they wanted them out of there. They called the National Guard, mobilized them, and got them out of there. That's what happened. So they teach one thing, they preach one thing, then they change it. But here's the way the commercial's showing it now. They're saying that DeSantis and Abbott are what's wrong with this country, and that they took people that were here legally, came legally through a port of entry, and had set up residencies and establishment, a residency here in this country, that they just went around, just randomly started grabbing anyone they thought looked Hispanic, throwed them on a bus, and sent them off. It's not what they were saying earlier in the year, but now they got to really, over exaggerate this stuff. But hey, it's midterms, guys. So then there's also a couple of abortion commercials. Now, this is something the Democrats have really been hammering hard on. We're talking millions of dollars they've been putting into this, upward of almost $1 billion into these ads. So one of the commercials that come out, and y'all may have seen some of these, but I can't air them on here because every channel that's tried to air them has had that video immediately taken down for some reason. I don't know why. So we'll just tell you the setup of what it is. One of the commercials is geared toward children, and it's apparently a morning after pill. And I forget the name of it. They give like this kind of Jules, but it's spelled like Jules or something like that. Jules is what it's called. And they're like, okay. They really geared this commercial. It's cartoonish. It's got little kid type running around, little teddy bears and all this kind of weird stuff. So I don't know how young of an audience you're trying to reach. Seems kind of perverted to me. But it's a morning after pill. And you don't even have to pay for it. You don't have to get a parent to sign for it or anything. Any age, does not matter. You just walk in, you need a morning after pill, and boom, they're going to hand it to you. Is what the commercial is. And it's showing these kids. Like, I'm talking kids. We're not talking about, teenagers, which are still kids, but showing kids in the commercial, cartooned. So, remember back, and this may be before some of y'all's time, but I think most of us remember, Joe Camel, the commercial that came out. For those who don't know who Joe Camel is, Camel Cigarettes, the cartoon version of the Camel, they called him Joe Camel. And they really hammered on that commercial. It's like, they're gearing kids toward wanting to smoke. So, they want your kids to be able to go out and don't get me wrong, smoking's bad for your health, guys. I know as a smoker, but I can tell you this: when it comes down to it, these people are just really throwing facts out that are just completely insane. When you look at it, they hammer on people who smoke a cigarette. You can't smoke in here. You can't smoke over there, whatever. Hey, that's fine. I don't want to smoke around people anyway because I'm tired of hearing y'all complaining. But the main thing is that they come in, but it's okay for you to go out and get abortions done. Like it's not a big deal. It is a medical procedure. It is a big deal. And it actually causes scarring in your uterus, for those who don't realize that. There was a young lady I worked with, and apparently she'd had several abortions. And when I say several, I'm meaning more than 3. And now her and her husband want to conceive, and they can't, because every time she ends up getting pregnant, it miscarries because of the scarring. So that's something to be aware of. That's stuff that they don't tell you about in these commercials. But this new commercial that's out is just disgusting. So they have this scenario set up, scenario that very rarely happens. And it comes in and they say, okay, with this, and it shows, it's a cartoon. It shows a kid that's probably 12, 13 years old. And they go, okay, well, this child was raped by, a rapist or something. And they are basically, laying in a hospital bed. They do a rape kit to say, okay, she's pregnant. Well, first off, reality is they can't tell that quick. It doesn't happen that quick. It takes a few days. But now what they could have done, I guess, is give them a morning after pill if that's what the child decided or whatever, which is legal in pretty much all the states. Not all of them, but most of them. But they're trying to make it seem like abortion is completely wiped off the map. But understand, yeah, I would love to see a day where abortion is completely gone. And the reason I say that is because any woman that's a real woman, in my opinion, they fight for their child. They would lay down their life for their own child. That's the way it is. That's the way it is in nature. That's what we see happen in nature. That's the way it's bred into us, guys. It should be anyway. If it's not, you have no business having kids. But there is adoption, other types of things that can happen too. So something you need to be aware of. But that's my personal opinion. But they make it seem like this child is who's pregnant is then going to be followed around by a Republican representative, like they don't have anything else going on. But they're going to assign a caseworker who is literally going to follow this child every second of their term on the pregnancy to make sure it's carried full term. It's not going to happen. I don't know where to even come up with the idea, but there's people out there who have the lack of thought process and will buy into just anything that they say, and they're going to be sitting, oh my gosh, that's just horrible that they done that. That kid will understand it wasn't a kid to begin with. Remember the hypothetical scenario everyone kept talking about? The 9-year-old or 10-year-old, whatever it was, up in Indiana who was pregnant and was wanting to have an abortion and all this. Turns out it was a hypothetical situation. Wasn't even a real person, but they were announcing that stuff. They were popping out all over the news like that was just the worst thing in the world that ever happened, And I'm like, in that kind of situation, I don't agree with abortion, but also it is people's rights to make their own decision. That is what God Almighty says. He gives everyone a free choice. And if they choose to do that, to kill that child, that's on them. I don't answer for it. They do. I preach out that is a life and it has a right to live. What you decide to do from there is between you and God, not me and you. So that's up to y'all, but it's the way that they put these commercials in, and it's disgusting because they're gearing it toward children. Why are they gearing it toward children? Well, what kind of shows do children watch? We sit there and we watch a few different types of TV shows around here, but not a whole lot. But all of the shows nowadays are geared where it takes place where high school age. What does every middle schooler want to be? A high schooler. What does every high schooler wish life was like? The high school's on TV, I guess. But that's basically the way every show that comes out. What was it, Stranger Things, I think, or whatever. And it's always got these kids, and it shows them, hugging each other, kissing each other. And I'm not talking in an affectionate way as far as they're friends or something, but always in a romantic situation. And that's the way the world has geared them too. That's why we have such a sexualized populace today, because they started that stuff when I was a kid. They've continued it. They've really doubled down on it now. That's what's happening in the world. You'd be surprised. Well, maybe you wouldn't. I was surprised how many people had seen like Game of Thrones. I'd never even heard of it until it was like in its last season. And people were like, oh yeah, it's got some really cool dragons and stuff. So then you go back, so oh, check this out. Started. Next thing you know, it's nudity and the gay movements and the agendas and stuff like that, and just constant. And this new one now is not only that, but it's also got incest and all this other kind of stuff in it. And you'd be, maybe you won't be surprised. I was surprised how many people actually sit back and say, oh yeah, it's on tonight, and they let their kids watch it when it comes on Sunday nights with them, and then skip out on school the next day because they was up late watching that trash. And that's the world we live in. So I'm not too surprised to see where we're at in society today. I'm not. But understand that there will be a reckoning for these types of sins. There will be a reckoning to all mankind for the neglect that's being showed to these children. In fact, it tells us in the Bible, it's going to be worse for people that lead those little ones astray. And that's what they're doing, because these kids have not reached a point where they can make those decisions themselves. Now, granted, yeah, they don't want them smoking a cigarette. They shouldn't. But it's okay for them to go out and steal their parents' vapes. It's okay for them to, be out having unprotected sex, because that's what the commercial really doubled down on is, the passionate moment. You don't have to worry about the protection and stuff. Let me tell you, STDs are real, guys. I can remember, I guess it was around, I don't know, 2009, something like that, when I first moved down to Florida. There was a sign that when they were coming out of Alabama, it says, welcome to Panama City, Florida, was it the STD capital of the world or something? It's like, wow, but apparently that it is. I mean that, and it's one of those situations where it's rampant in their schools. You would be shocked. You would be appalled to find how many kids are being treated for STDs, and I've not even had one in my entire life. So hey, it's like, what's the problem? Well, the problem is not that they're not having safe sex. The problem is they shouldn't be having sex at all. They're not married. That's where it's at, guys. But that's what's wrong with the world today, and there will be a reckoning, and we're seeing that reckoning now. Understand the things that we're seeing happen around the world, that they're going, oh, it's climate change. Climate change is just to wash us away for them to go, we don't know what's going on. Screw it. Read your Bibles. It tells you exactly what's coming on. Sin is abounding. Sin is increasing across the world, and God's fixing to punish the world. Before he does, he's going to call his church out of it. That's where we're at today. That's where we're at in society. Make sure you're spreading that gospel. Make sure you're giving everyone as much information as you can of how to not get left behind into the chaos that's going to ensue. Everyone have a wonderful day.